The cattle queen dared him to train her wild stallion. 30 ranchers failed. A half-starved cowboy won. They said the horse was evil. Cursed, maybe. Possessed, definitely. 30 men had tried. 30 had bled. And still, the stallion stood in that corral, breathing like a blacksmith's bellows, steam rising off his back like smoke off firewood. No one got close anymore. Not after he crushed a man's jaw with his hooves and left him choking in the dust. The queen didn't flinch. She lit a match on the heel of her boot, lit a cigarette, and said to no one in particular, "Find me a man who's already dead inside." 3 days later, he arrived on a mule that looked ready to collapse. No saddlebag, no name, just a long coat covered in trail dust and boots that didn't match. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't ask for the job. He just looked through the rails at the horse stomping circles in corral, eyes locked, chest heaving, teeth bared like a challenge. The ranch hands laughed. One spat. He's gonna last what, for seconds? 3. Another said, if the mule don't quit first. But the queen didn't laugh. She stepped down from the porch, leather creaking, spurs silent. "You here to ride him?" she asked. The stranger looked at the stallion, then at her. "I'm here to stop running." The queen blinked, not out of confusion, out of recognition. "Name?" "Jude." "You ever trained a horse?" "I've buried one," he said. "Yours?" He nodded once. That was enough. The queen tipped her head toward the corral. "Get in." No rope, no saddle, no warnings. Jude dropped his bag beside the gate and stepped through without hesitation. No one stopped him. No one offered advice. Because everyone watching knew what came next. Blood, dust, maybe a scream. War cry turned the moment he stepped inside. He didn't charge. Not yet. He just stood still, tail flicking, eyes drilling through the man like he could see whatever haunted him from inside out. Jude didn't raise his hands, didn't move fast. He just breathed slow and let the wind carry his scent. The stallion pawed once, twice. Then came the blast. War cry charged, hooves pounding, nostrils flared. A freight train made a muscle in rage. Jude didn't run, didn't shout. He whispered one word, not to the horse, to himself. "Not today." War cry skidded to a stop a foot away. Dirt spraying into Jude's coat. The stallion reared, screamed, threw his body toward him, but curved away at the last second, circling, testing. The crowd was silent. Even the wind seemed to pause. Eleanor, the cattle queen, stepped forward to the fence, cigarette burning down between her fingers. She'd seen this before, but only in her dreams. The man wasn't controlling the horse. He wasn't fighting him either. He was mirroring. Every step Warcry took, Jude took one of his own. Every breath the horse pulled, Jude matched it, until 5 minutes passed. Then 6. Warcry stopped, snorted, lowered his head. Jude didn't reach for him. He just crouched, slowly, turned sideways and sat in the dirt. And the stallion, the killer, took 2 steps forward and stood beside him. The ranch hands didn't cheer. They didn't speak, because they didn't understand what they were looking at. But Eleanor did. She saw in Jude's posture, in Warcry's eyes. This wasn't victory. It was recognition. 2 wild things, tired of bleeding, still too dangerous to touch, but not to see. And that was a moment Eleanor McCall, queen of the hardest land in Texas, felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Nobody said a word when he came out of the corral. Not the hands who bet he wouldn't survive. Not the foreman who'd seen better men get carried off in splints. Not even the queen herself. Jude brushed the dust off his coat like he'd just come back from a walk. No limp, no swagger, just a quiet calm that unsettled the whole yard. He didn't ask if he had the job. He didn't need to. Eleanor McCall leaned against the fence post, eyes unreadable, cigarette now nothing but ash between her fingers. "What do you want?" she asked. Jude looked at her and said the word she didn't expect to hear from any man. Not here. Room, food, and silence. She nodded. "Fine. You'll earn your keep or bleed trying." Then she turned and walked away like she hadn't just seen the impossible. The hands watched him all the way to the bunkhouse. One muttered, "He's going to curse this whole place." Another whispered, "That horse is a devil, and now he's got a preacher." But no one said it to his face, because there was something in the way Jude walked, like a man who'd already died once and wasn't afraid to do it again. That night, the ranch was quiet, too quiet. Even War Cry stopped pacing the corral. He stood still in the dark, ears twitching, watching the bunkhouse window, like he could hear Jude breathing on the other side. Eleanor poured whiskey into a glass, but didn't drink it. She stared at the fire in her hearth, tried to ignore the feeling in her chest, that slow, rising burn she hadn't felt since her husband died. Not love, not attraction, a kind of fear. The kind that came when something you thought was untouchable finally moved. She didn't trust it, didn't trust him. But she couldn't stop thinking about the way War Cry had stood beside him like they were old friends who'd shared the same hell. She lit another cigarette and told herself she'd test him tomorrow. Push harder, break him before the horse did, just like all the others. Jude woke before the sun. He didn't shave, didn't eat. He walked straight to the corral barefoot, silent, and sat in the dirt with his back to the horse. War Cry stared at him from across the pen. Didn't move, didn't charge. Just watched. For an hour. Then, two. The ranch hands stared from the barn windows like they were watching a wolf and a lamb play cards. "Guy's not riding ahead," one said. But no one went near him. And Eleanor, she stood behind the barn, watching. Arms crossed. Face locked. But inside, her chest pulled tight with questions. How'd he do it? Why? What was he hiding? At noon, War Cry finally stepped forward. One step, then another. Jude didn't flinch, didn't turn. He just whispered, "Good." The horse lowered his head, not in defeat, in permission, and Eleanor felt her heartbeat skip, because in that moment she realized this man wasn't training the stallion. He was healing him. And if he could do that, what else could he heal? What else could he break? Later that night, Eleanor found him in the tack room fixing a busted halter. "You talk to horses?" she asked. He didn't look up, only the ones that listen. She stepped closer, arms still folded, voice low. "Where'd you learn that?" Jude tightened the strap. "Prison." Silence. Then Eleanor leaned back slightly. "What for?" He looked up, eyes sharp but not defensive. "Does it matter?" "Only if I'm sleeping under the same roof." Jude stood slowly. "Close now. Too close. I was in a cell for 5 years for something I didn't do," he said. "By the time they figured it out, I didn't care anymore." Eleanor didn't blink. "Was it murder?" "Yes." "Did you do it?" "No." She studied his face. Saw no cracks. Just a man made of too many years and not enough forgiveness. She nodded once. "Don't give me a reason to regret this." "I won't." And just before she turned to leave, he added, "I'm not the dangerous one here." By morning, War Cry let Jude touch his face. Not with a rope, not with a glove. Just an open palm, steady and quiet. The stallion didn't rear, didn't bite. He lowered his head, and the ranch, for the first time in years, exhaled. But it didn't last. Because the minute word got out that the Queen's killer stallion had bowed to a nameless drifter, people started talking, started watching, started planning, and someone didn't like it. By the end of the week, the whispers had spread beyond the ranch. They reached the saloon in Twin Creek, rode out on whiskey breath and spit. The stallion bowed to a ghost. Queen's got herself a new favorite. That drifter? He's got her heart or her land, maybe both. Eleanor heard it. So did Jude. He didn't react. But the others did. Especially Clay Danner. Eleanor's longest-serving hand, the one who nearly lost and I tried to ride War Cry 6 months ago. He still walked with a limp, still spit blood some mornings. He hated the horse. He hated the silence around Jude even more. "You don't just show up out of nowhere and tame the devil," he told the bunkhouse crew. "Not unless you made a deal." Some laughed it off. Others didn't. That kind of fear turns into something fast, something sharp. By Sunday morning, Eleanor found a dead rabbit nailed to Jude's door, blood still dripping. A message carved in the wood. Leave. She burned it before he could see it. He saw anyway. Didn't say a word. Didn't ask who did it. He just cleaned the stain off the wood and started sleeping outside Warcree's corral. That night it rained, and still he sat, soaked, silent, waiting, listening, like he knew the storm hadn't even started yet. The next morning, Clay snapped. He rode out early, before the sun, saddlebags packed, gun cleaned, said he was checking fence lines. Instead, he went into town, found a man named Brody Quinn, a bounty hunter with a scar that split his chin and a grudge against anyone who walked quiet and carried guilt. His name's Jude. He's not right, Clay said. Something in him's wrong. I want him gone. Brody smiled. I can make men disappear, but it ain't cheap. Clay tossed a coin pouch on the table. It'll be worth it. Back at the ranch, Eleanor watched Jude saddle Warcry for the first time. No buck, no fight. The stallion let him, like they'd done this before in another life. Like Jude was the only person he'd ever allow on his back. Eleanor's hands tightened on the fence rail. Why him? She muttered. Why now? Her foreman stood beside her. Because the broken know each other. She didn't like that answer. Because it meant she wasn't watching a trick. She was watching truth. And truth was dangerous. That night, she brought Jude supper, 2 tin plates, still hot. He looked surprised. You don't strike me as a tray-carrying type, he said. I'm not. She sat beside him under the awning by the barn. Rain tapped soft against the roof. The corral was quiet. Warcry already asleep. Eleanor took a breath. What happened to the horse you buried? Jude didn't answer right away. He looked out into the dark, jaw tight, eyes heavy. He was mine. Bought him with money I didn't have. Trained him from nothing. Knew my hands better than I did. What happened? Someone hurt him. Beat him while I was gone. Eleanor waited. He changed after that. Flinched at doors. Kicked at walls. Started biting. Couldn't be touched. And I tried to fix it. Thought love could undo pain. He swallowed hard. It couldn't. Eleanor looked down at her plate. Sometimes I think I'm the same way. Jude looked at her. Really looked. You still bite? Only when I'm scared. Silence stretched. Soft. Safe. Then a gun cocked in the dark. Jude stood fast, hand already at his side, but it was too late. Brody stepped out of the trees with a revolver drawn and a grin that could rot wood. Evening, he said. You're a hard man to find, Jude. Eleanor stood. Who the hell are you? Insurance, Brody said. Hired to clean up a mistake. Jude stepped between him and Eleanor. You want to talk? Leave her out of it. Brody laughed. I'm not here to talk. He raised a gun. But before he could fire, a scream tore through the night. Not from a man. From Warcry. The stallion charged the corral gate like a cannon blast. Wood shattered. Brody spun just in time to see Black Fury hit him head on. The revolver fired once, wild, into the sky. Then Warcry reared and brought both hooves down. Dust flew. Men shouted. And when it cleared, Brody was unconscious in the dirt. Blood leaking from his shoulder. Jude rushed to Warcry's side. Palms up. Easy, he whispered. Easy, boy. The stallion stopped. Snorted. Lowered his head like a war drum, quieting after battle. And Eleanor, she couldn't speak, because she'd just seen a beast protect a man, and a man protect her. And she finally understood what she'd really brought to her ranch. Not a ranch hand, not a drifter, but a mirror, one who didn't need fixing, one who showed her what healing looked like when it stood its ground and stayed. The next morning, no one said anything. Not about the bounty hunter with a broken collarbone. Not about the busted corral gate. Not about the stallion that chose to fight for a man instead of kill him. The ranch had gone quiet. Not out of fear, but reverence. Jude didn't speak much that day. He repaired the gate himself. Rebuilt it stronger. Tighter. Reinforced it with iron and patience. And Warcry? He stood beside him the whole time. No halter. No rope. just there, like a dog guarding the only person he trusted. Eleanor watched from the porch, hands folded, shoulders square. But something inside her had cracked. Not a break, not a wound, something softer, like a locked door swinging open for the first time in years. She found him by the fence after sundown. He was brushing Warcree's back, humming something so low it almost wasn't music. She didn't speak. Until he did. I know who hired him. She nodded. So do I? He looked over his shoulder. You gonna fire Clay? No. Why not? Because hate isn't the thing I'm trying to teach out here. Jude nodded. He'll leave anyway, she added. Men like that don't stay when the world starts changing. Silence settled between them like old dust. Then she said, You could stay. He kept brushing, then stopped, turned. What do you mean? I mean stay, not as a hand, not as a ghost. She stepped closer. Stay as someone real, someone seen. He looked away. I don't know how. I didn't ask if he knew how. I asked if he wanted to. Jude stared at her, and for once, his eyes weren't tired. They were afraid, but not of her, of what it might mean to stop running. He set the brush down. If I stay, he said, I have to tell you everything. I already know the important parts. You don't know what happened the night I was arrested. I don't care. He stepped forward. I killed someone. I figured. He was hurting a child. I stopped him, and I didn't stop soon enough. Eleanor didn't blink. She reached up, touched his jaw, thumb grazing the scar beneath his lip. Then maybe you're exactly where you're supposed to be. And he leaned in, forehead to hers, and everything else, the ranch, the stallion, the pain, faded like dust and wind. A year later, the ranch was different, not softer, just wiser. The gate stayed open longer. The fences stood straighter. The hands worked harder. And Warcry, he wasn't a monster anymore. He was a legend. People came from other counties just to see the horse that bowed to no one, except the man who once walked into a storm and never walked out. Eleanor built something new at the back of the ranch. No stalls, no locks, just open space, shade trees, and a carved wooden sign that read, Warcry's Sanctuary. They didn't break horses there. They healed them. And on some nights, when the moon rose clean over the hills and the air smelled like cedar and sweat, Jude would sit on the porch with Eleanor beside him and Warcry grazing nearby. And he'd whisper, This is what peace feels like. And Eleanor would nod, resting her hand over his. Because love like theirs wasn't loud. It didn't ride in on a white horse. It came in slow, broken, bleeding, and stayed anyway. If the story stirred something in you, if it reminded you that even the broken can still build something beautiful, don't leave just yet. Subscribe to the channel. Tap the notification bell so you never miss the next story that speaks straight to your heart. We're just getting started, and we're glad you're here.